My name is Professor Christobeg Amoa. I'm the Executive Director of Center for Food Safety and Agricultural Research. And we're here on a public health awareness initiative to educate the Nigerian public, and especially those who are at the corridors of power, who are involved in policy generation and policy implementation, of the dangers of genetically modified organisms as foods, especially in the manner in which they have been pushed onto our nation to achieve what we perceive as an agenda of war, economic war and otherwise.
So what are the health implications of GMO?
There are various publications and research outputs out there in the public domain and in academic journals of the health implications of genetically modified organisms. A lot of research has been done across the world, and one of the prominent health implications that comes out is different kinds of cancers. Cancers that have been traced to be occasioned by the very act of genetic modification, because this is biotechnology and it involves the artificially tampering with the genetic code of organisms, in this context food crops, and that is why they are called genetically modified crops. It is the modification of genetic material, and genetic material is what composes or what encodes the attributes, the character, the features, physical and the behavioral features of species, be they animals or plants. So in this case, these organisms, which have been modified biotechnologically, have been found experimentally through research to be responsible for certain mutations that have caused cancers of different variants. And then secondly, it's been observed that in their production, in the formulation of those genetically modified organisms, certain agrochemicals, chemicals that are used in agricultural fields, are incorporated in those organisms, in those crops, such that to achieve a desired aim of discouraging insect pests of consuming those crops. And eventually, because these agrochemicals, the notable one of which is glyphosate, which is found in a commercial agrochemical herbicide known as Roundup, these chemicals are incorporated in the crop material, in the tissue, and eventually they end up on the table, on the menu table, and they are consumed by humans and animals that consume those food crops. Again, because sometimes, not sometimes, all the time, the companies that are bringing and promoting these genetically modified organisms were the original companies that were manufacturing those agrochemicals. And over the years, their businesses started suffering low patronage because those herbicides, particularly glyphosate is one of them, were found by farmers to also be negatively affecting their crops. Because when they apply them on the field to kill the grass, some of the crops will also die. So these same companies, a chief amongst them is Monsanto, Syngenta is there. Monsanto has transformed to Bayer. Now what they did was to now go into the business of genetic modification of the food crops, such that the food crops will resist the application of those herbicides. And because they did that, farmers were now at liberty to apply those herbicides at will, without fear of negatively affecting their food crops. So chemicals were now dumped. The rate and volume of chemicals being applied on agricultural fields in our country has quadrupled, has increased tremendously, more than 4 times, thereby creating an environmental burden on our environment, and also leaching and flooding into surface water and groundwater bodies. And that means that most of the water sources for drinking, for consumption in this country is derivable from either ponds or dams or rivers or ground wells known as boreholes. And these chemicals leach into these waters, they end up in the bodies of human beings. And that informs what we are systematically observing through research to be the proliferation, the prevalence of some health challenges, cancer is prominent, and then organ failure like kidney failure, like liver failure, like different kinds of inflammatory diseases. Asthma is also increasing on the rise, and childhood diseases like autism, like attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which is known as ADHD, or like things like autism, or like early memory decay, memory loss in young people in their middle age, which was not the case before now. So on these two fronts, the genetic material being modified itself is tampering with the human genome as we consume them, because DNA tends to cross across. So that is why you see sometimes, you see when a man and a woman marry, and as they mate and produce children, the children tend to represent them. And also sometimes you see the couples begin to look alike over time because of crossing of DNA material. But basically, most importantly, the influx of chemicals into our ecosystem is affecting the environment and also affecting us who live on the environment. And then again, there is a challenge with our food system. The the GMOs are engineered to encourage monocropping, such that industrial farmers can come in and crop large hectareages of land and produce. If it is maize, they produce maize. If it is cowpea, they produce cowpea. As against our traditional practice where our farmers engage in mixed cropping and they produce variety of foods, which encourages agroecology and biodiversity. But in this case now, these GMOs will accelerate the depletion of biodiversity and also encourage monocropping, distorting our natural ecology and creating bigger environmental and ecological challenges in the future. And then again, there is this thing we have observed with food security or insecurity as occasioned by an economic war. Because these genetically modified organisms, as the seeds are sterile, at most they are programmed to reproduce perhaps in one generation or at most 2 generations, sometimes not to reproduce at all. Therefore, the bumper harvest that is promised farmers that these seeds can produce often is just in the first generation, which even scientifically, through research, we have found that naturally hybrid seeds, naturally bred seeds, sometimes with the appropriate agronomic practices, produce higher yields than the so-called GMO seeds. But in any case, in an event where they produce close to the promised yield, they don't reproduce. That occasions the farmer to go back to the merchant, which in this case are transnationals. They're not even Nigerian businessmen, transnational companies, to go back to them to plant, to procure, to plant year in and year out. And aside from that, because they are genetically modified to engineer to engender, introduce certain traits, it means tomorrow the one who owns the patent of genetically modifying them can decide to genetically modify you or I to produce children that have no intelligence or have certain traits. So that we view it as a form of economic war. And then finally, there is this question of strategic national security. You see, when somebody from outside your country, a foreigner, is controlling your food source, your security is at question. So as patriotic Nigerians, we are calling on those in government, those who are responsible for regulation and policy creation, those who are responsible for policy enforcement, to come to the understanding that this is our national security. We all have to be patriotic to this country because we have no other country. The rest of the young people that are flying out to Japan, we shouldn't encourage it because this is our one nation, this is our country. Therefore, we cannot fold our arms and support or overlook our policymakers either ignorantly or by procured ignorance, giving away the national security of this country or the strategic national interest of this country. Because ultimately, because of the power of the genetic modification, these GMOs will completely carpet our traditional seeds and therefore leaving us at the mercy of those who are engineering them from abroad. Especially also that the GMOs are patented seeds. That means they are the intellectual property of somebody, and he's not a Nigerian, he's a transnational company like Monsanto, like Bayer, like Syngenta, like Bill and Melinda Gates, who own shares in all those companies, and therefore we would have been stripped of the right to even take ownership of the seeds, especially as we are seeing some clauses in the National Biosafety Management Act, in the Seed Varieties Act that has been passed into law, forbidding us to replant seeds that are patented material of other organizations. So this is a very serious matter. We call it a food war, a biological war, and a national security question.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you.